Right now on Upfront.
Guilty.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial.
Former President Donald Trump convicted on all 34 counts, and now the fallout.
November 5th is going to be the most important day in the history of our country.
5 months from Election Day, the impact in battleground Wisconsin.
I think he's going to win by a landslide.
The hot issues, Republicans hammering border security, the Biden campaign courting black voters.
Don't get it twisted, black people.
Our guest this Sunday, Congressman Brian Stile, Congresswoman Gwen Moore, former Governor Scott Walker. Then doubling down, House Democrats expanding their targets into Wisconsin, the new investment and promise from the DCCC, the committee's chair, Congresswoman Susan Delbene, moments away.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. That historic verdict still rippling this weekend.
And now the questions about its impact in key swing states like Wisconsin. Former President Donald Trump, now the first American president convicted on criminal charges, will be sentenced July 11th. That's just 4 days ahead of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, where he will officially accept his party's nomination for president.
Amidst the historic verdict this weekend, that split screen now playing out in battleground Wisconsin. Just about 5 months from Election Day, two prominent events highlighting the strong divide and the key issues in the battle for Wisconsin.
Everybody here has a right to be heard.
It was just hours after the Trump verdict came down.
What do you think of the Trump verdict as we're now 5 months out?
I think he's going to win by a landslide. Best publicity ever.
A town hall event in Kenosha bringing out Republican voters in a swing county in the key swing state of Wisconsin.
And guilty on all of them.
Okay, that's a joke. So, yeah, doesn't change my opinion.
Do you think it helps him with Republicans? Do you think it boosts his support?
For Trump supporters, yeah, I think the independents are still going to be a little confused. That's going to be a little tricky.
Congressman Brian Stile hosted a town hall on border security. No mention of the historic verdict this night.
I said from the beginning that even the charges were a partisan exercise by a Democratic district attorney. Disappointing, to say the least. That said, I think at the end of the day, this conviction will be overturned by the appeals court in the appeals process.
Do you have any hesitations now with the Republican nominee, your Republican nominee, being a convicted felon?
I'm concerned about what would happen if we had 4 more years under President Biden. We'd have a continuation of the broken border policies, we'd have continuation of inflation. I think this election's a clear contrast between two sets of policies, and President Trump is the individual that we need to make president at the end of the day.
The focus, a critical top issue for Republican voters ahead of November. 37% saying it's their top issue, alongside 23% of key independents in the state.
We have veterans that are being put on the street for these illegals. I would like to see a law passed by Congress, because you guys control the purse, that says that our tax dollars are spent on U.S. citizens only. You come for welfare, show me your ID.
The event featuring the local sheriff, county executive, and Rodney Scott, the former U.S. Border Patrol chief under both President Trump and the first 7 months of the Biden administration.
You've been critical of the Biden administration and their approach in recent years and in recent months. Is this part of a campaign push for you as we look ahead to November?
Not necessarily. I want people to think about the border and to make rational decisions when they go into that ballot box. But I was never a political appointee. I was never partisan. I was a career Border Patrol agent that got promoted to be chief. My messaging, or my mantra, if you will, has always been the same. The border matters.
I'm curious, as we look at polling, Republicans' immigration and border security is super high on their priority list. Democrats, it's way down at the bottom. Why do you think there's such a divide?
You know what? That's $1 million question now. I think a lot of it, especially the more I get out and travel and talk to people, they don't understand. I think in a very, very bad way in this country, we put ourselves into echo chambers. I flip the channel a lot and watch different news networks that advertise the border or explain the border in different contexts. If you lean heavy left, you have no idea what's going on the border. Literally, everything I watch, everything I read, it's about a migrant like humanitarian crisis. It's about economics. And they completely ignore all the threats that are involved. The far right is exactly the opposite.
Congress failing to pass any meaningful bipartisan immigration reform ahead of November.
Anything that could pass a divided Congress?
I think the House-passed border security bill should be taken up in the Senate. Let the votes fall where they may. The Senate bill that was brought up failed in bipartisan fashion. I would actually offer to you that if the Republican-passed border security bill was brought up in the Senate, it would actually pass and have bipartisan support.
You think there'd be some Democrats who vote for H.R. 2?
Because it works. Because it works. When the House passed it, people didn't think, one, that the House could pass it. We proved that we could. And two, the problem has only gotten worse since we took action last summer. So I'd love to see the Senate bring it up. If they want to make amendments or adjustments, let's have that broad conversation. But the fact that the Senate is refusing to act on this, the fact that President Biden has authorities today where he could substantively improve border security yet refuses to act, tells us a lot about what's going on in Washington and how broken the whole system is.
The Biden campaign and DCCC is going to say it's your fault and Republicans' fault for not doing anything on the border.
They have a lot of talking points, but what you'll actually see is a bill that was passed in the House of Representatives that actually solves the border crisis.
Meantime, Friday, the Biden campaign officially launching Black Voters for Biden-Harris in Wisconsin.
We don't have to imagine. We do not have to imagine what a second Trump presidency would look like.
Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson, who attended the nationwide launch in Philly, leading the efforts, just as we recently profiled the warning signs and what appears to be low enthusiasm among Black voters, a critical base for Democrats now just 5 months out.
Let's be real. He's still going to be the Republican nominee. He's still running for president. And if Black voters don't come out in droves to show their opposition for just how unfair that system was to them, he very well may win.
The campaign promising an historic outreach this summer and visits from campaign surrogates targeting Black voters. Here's Congresswoman Gwen Moore.
I want to first ask you about the verdict. There's been a ton of reaction in the 24 hours since. Senator Johnson called it election interference. Trump said it was rigged. Do they have any valid points in their concerns about what happened?
You know, you and I talked before the verdict was rendered, and I told you then that I was going to trust the justice system, trust the jury system. It's the only thing I know as an American. I had my doubts about his being convicted. I thought about the possibility of there being, some juror that was a real MAGA fan that would ignore all the evidence, but that didn't happen.
In the 24 hours following the verdict, I haven't necessarily seen Democrats out in the streets celebrating this. We're 5 months out from the election. What's the approach here?
Well, I mean, for one thing, we are no longer ignoring the fact that 74 million people voted for Donald Trump, and that we have our colleagues in Congress and in the Senate who are doubling down, quadrupling down in support of Donald Trump. And he is going to be here in Milwaukee. He's going to be nominated right here from Milwaukee. So we can't take our foot off the pedal and just assume that people won't give him a pass, because the things that attract them to the Trump campaign are still there.
What's your biggest challenge this summer heading into the fall to mobilize voters? You can talk about the economy until people are blue in the face, but when they go to the grocery store, when they can't afford their mortgage, when interest rates are too high, how do you mobilize them?
Well, people do. I think it's really important, to really take up the challenge that Trump has given us. How are you compared to 4 years ago? And if people they cannot say that they're not a little bit better off, even though they're still suffering. Wages have gone up, but then interest rates have eaten that away. Those interest rates are going to come down. The Fed is they're waiting on some target inflation. This might be macroeconomics. We're asking people to hold on, because things are moving in the right direction.
Whether they like it or not, they're going to hear from you and see you
They're
this
going to
summer.
hear from me. I'm going to lay it out. Here's what, let's just weigh the equities here. So you're telling me, and I'm prepared to listen to why you don't want to vote or you want to vote for Trump. Just hear me out. We could talk about health care. We could talk about justice. We could talk about unemployment rates. We could talk about helping small black businesses. We could talk about infrastructure improvement. We could talk about Joe Biden cutting the poverty rate among black children in half with the child tax credit. And then to see Republicans constantly clawing that back.
Our coverage continues. The Trump verdict fallout. Now, the implications in key swing states like Wisconsin. Former Republican Governor Scott Walker is standing by next.